The wind howled like a hungry beast, tearing at the old oak trees that lined our street. It was a winter that bit deep, a cold that seeped into your bones and wouldn't let go. I remember looking out the window of our warm, well-lit living room, a mug of steaming tea cradled in my hands, and seeing him. Just a shadow against the swirling snow, a figure huddled on the park bench. His name was Elias. I was 50, a woman who had spent the better part of her life playing the role of the perfect wife. Richard, my husband, was a successful businessman, a man of routine and predictable comforts. Our house, a large, elegant Victorian, was a testament to his success. But inside, it felt cold as the winter outside. We had drifted apart, our conversations reduced to polite exchanges about the weather or the day's news. The spark, if it had ever truly existed, had long since died. That night, something stirred within me. It wasn't pity, not entirely. It was a sense of empathy, a recognition of a shared loneliness. I couldn't bear the thought of him out there, freezing. So, I did something I hadn't done in years. I acted on impulse. I grabbed an old blanket, a thermos of soup, and a few sandwiches, and I went out. Elias was thin, his face etched with hardship, his eyes a deep, weary blue. He accepted my offerings with a quiet gratitude that touched me more than any grand gesture ever could. He didn't ask for much, just a warm place to rest for a few nights until he could find something more permanent. I offered him our guest room, a space that had been empty for far too long. Richard, bless his oblivious heart, barely noticed. He was always buried in his work, his world revolving around spreadsheets and conference calls. Elias, on the other hand, was a constant presence, a gentle, quiet soul who seemed to appreciate the simple things in life. He helped with chores, fixed a leaky faucet, and even played the old piano in the living room, filling the house with melodies that had been silent for years. It started subtly, a shared glance across the kitchen table, a lingering touch as I handed him a tool. We talked, really talked, about our lives, our dreams, our disappointments. I learned about his past, his struggles, his quiet resilience. He was a man who had been broken by life, but not defeated. One evening, as the fire crackled in the hearth, he told me about his wife, who had died years ago. He spoke of her with such tenderness, such love, that a pang of jealousy, sharp and unexpected, pierced my heart. I realized then, with a jolt, that I was falling for him. The first kiss was a stolen moment, a desperate, almost accidental collision of lips in the darkened hallway. It was charged with a raw emotion that I hadn't felt in decades. The guilt was immediate, a heavy weight in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a sense of awakening. I felt alive, vibrant, like a flower that had been dormant for too long, finally blooming. We became lovers, our affair a secret whispered in the shadows of our comfortable home. We met in the guest room, our bodies entwined, our whispers a symphony of forbidden desire. It was a dangerous game, a thrilling dance on the edge of discovery. Every stolen moment was a risk, a gamble that could shatter my carefully constructed world. But the desire was too strong, the connection too deep. I was addicted to his touch, his words, the way he looked at me, like I was the only woman in the world. I was living a double life, a lie that grew heavier with each passing day. Have you ever felt like your life was just a movie on repeat? Like you're going through the motions, but you're not really living? Maybe you found yourself in a situation where a simple act of kindness led to something unexpected, something that changed everything. If you've ever felt that pull, that forbidden desire, then you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. If you're enjoying this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There are so many more stories like this, and subscribing means you won't miss a single one. And if you want to support the channel in a cheaper way, please share the story with friends. Now, let's continue. The affair with Elias became a wildfire, consuming everything in its path. We were reckless, driven by a desperate hunger that ignored the looming consequences. The guest room, once a sanctuary, now felt like the epicenter of a dangerous secret, its walls whispering tales of our forbidden love. The stolen moments became more frequent, more intense, a constant dance on the precipice of discovery. Richard, bless his oblivious soul, was not entirely blind. He started asking questions, subtle at first, then more pointed. "You seem different, Susan," he'd say, his brow furrowed. "More vibrant." I'd brush it off, attributing my newfound energy to a new exercise routine or a renewed interest in gardening. But his eyes, those once familiar eyes, held a flicker of suspicion that sent shivers down my spine. The guilt was a constant companion, a heavy weight that pressed down on me, making it difficult to breathe. I loved Richard, in a way. He was a good man, a provider, a stable presence in my life. But the love I felt for Elias was different, a raw, passionate flame that threatened to consume us both. Elias, too, was struggling. He was a man accustomed to hardship, but the emotional turmoil of our affair was taking its toll. He was torn between his gratitude for my kindness and the overwhelming guilt of betraying my husband. He'd often look at me with a haunted expression, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and remorse. "Susan," he'd whisper, his voice rough with emotion, "this can't go on. It's not right." "I know," I'd reply, my voice barely a breath, "but I can't stop." We were trapped in a cycle of desire and guilt, a tangled web of emotions that grew tighter with each passing day. The fear of discovery was a constant, a shadow lurking in the corners of our lives. Every creak in the floorboards, every unexpected phone call, sent my heart racing. One evening, Richard came home early from work. He found me in the kitchen, preparing dinner, my hands trembling as I chopped vegetables. He looked at me with a strange intensity, his eyes searching my face. "Susan," he said, his voice low and deliberate, "we need to talk." My heart pounded in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I knew, in that moment, that the game was over. He had found something, a clue, a whisper of the truth. He led me to the living room, the room where we had shared so many quiet evenings, so many polite conversations. He sat me down on the sofa, his face etched with a mixture of sadness and anger. "I know about Elias," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. The air seemed to thicken, making it difficult to breathe. I couldn't speak, couldn't even meet his gaze. He told me how he had found a love letter, hidden in the guest room. A letter I had written to Elias, a confession of my deepest desires. He had read every word, every passionate declaration, every heartbreaking plea. The confrontation was a blur, a haze of tears and accusations. Richard's voice, usually so calm and measured, was filled with a raw pain that cut me to the core. He accused me of betrayal, of destroying our marriage, of shattering the life we had built together. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. I confessed everything, the guilt, the desire, the desperate need for connection. I told him about the loneliness, the emptiness that had consumed me, the way Elias had made me feel alive again. He listened, his face a mask of pain, his eyes filled with a deep, unyielding sadness. When I finished, he stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. "I need you to leave," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I packed a bag, my hands shaking, my mind numb. I looked around the house that had been my home for so many years, and I felt a wave of grief so intense that it threatened to drown me. Elias was gone. He had left a note, a simple apology, a promise to never return. He had spared me the pain of a final goodbye, a final confrontation. I found a small apartment, a cramped, impersonal space that reflected the emptiness inside me. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in my life. The guilt was a constant ache, a gnawing emptiness that wouldn't subside. I thought about Richard, about the life I had destroyed, about the pain I had caused. I thought about Elias, about the fleeting moments of passion, about the love that had burned so brightly, only to be extinguished by the weight of our secrets. I had made my choices, and I had to live with the consequences. There was no going back, no undoing the past. I had shattered my life, and now I had to pick up the pieces, try to rebuild something new, something different. Was it worth it? The question echoed in my mind, a haunting refrain. I didn't know. Perhaps, in some twisted way, it was. I had tasted life, truly lived, even if it was for a brief, forbidden moment. I had broken free from the comfortable prison of my marriage, even if it meant facing the harsh realities of loneliness and regret. Life is full of choices, isn't it? Sometimes, those choices lead us down unexpected paths that are filled with both joy and pain. If you've ever made a choice that changed your life, a choice that you both regret and cherish, then you'll understand my story. And if you've enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Your support allows me to bring more stories like this to you. And please, share this story. By sharing, you are helping others find these stories. Thank you.